One joke, one careless prank, one split-second decision. That's all it took for laughter to turn into tragedy. In this video, we reveal 6 moments where harmless fun spiraled into deadly consequences, leaving shock and heartbreak in its wake. On March 11, 2018 in Leeds, England, early evening temperatures hovered near 42 degrees Fahrenheit, with a steady breeze moving through the open sides of a multi-level driving range on the city's north end. The facility had 3 stacked floors of hitting bays, each with a waist-high guardrail and a 12-foot drop to the turf below. Bright overhead floodlights eliminated most shadows on the second level, where 4 friends had rented a bay. Among them was 22-year-old Kevin Turner, a warehouse worker who played golf only occasionally. The group checked in at 7:04 p.m., ordered food, and took their place in the bay. Security footage later showed they weren't intoxicated. They had a shared pitcher of beer and sodas, and none appeared impaired. What the footage does show is a pattern. The group spent much of the night pranking each other. Light taps with clubs, mock shoves, quick nudges from behind. Witnesses later reported seeing the same behavior throughout the evening. Kevin mostly ignored the antics. Between swings, he scrolled through his phone while his friends teased him. At 7:36 p.m., 2 other groups arrived in neighboring bays, adding more movement along the shared walkway. Visibility remained strong under the bright lamps above each mat. At 7:41 p.m., Kevin stepped forward for another shot. He stood close to the edge, less than a foot from the drop, and leaned slightly over the barrier while talking to the others behind him. One friend, Daniel, walked up with a drink in one hand and a club in the other. Daniel later explained it was meant to be another quick scare, similar to small pranks he had pulled earlier that night. A gentle shove to startle Kevin before he swung. He said he had done the same thing earlier with no issues. Security cameras recorded Daniel approaching, speaking briefly, then extending his hand toward Kevin's upper back. Footage shows the contact was brief and not forceful, but enough to disrupt his stance. Kevin's shoes slipped on the smooth hitting mat, and he lost balance instantly. His momentum carried him forward over the guardrail. A witness below said the fall happened so fast, he only saw a blur before impact. Kevin struck the turf head first, landing on the right side of his neck and shoulder. The witness shouted for assistance as staff members on the ground level ran toward him. The fall occurred at 7:41 p.m. Staff reached Kevin in under 40 seconds. He was unresponsive, with shallow, irregular breathing. Employees followed protocol by keeping him still, monitoring his airway, and relaying observations to emergency services. Paramedics arrived at 7:52 p.m., stabilized Kevin, and transported him with CPR ongoing. He was pronounced dead at 8:37 p.m., the result of a catastrophic cervical spinal cord injury. Police found no intoxication or fight, but classified the shove as a reckless prank, given the elevated ledge and slick mat. The coroner ruled the death a misadventure, caused by a sudden action in a hazardous position. On June 23, 2018 in Quezon City, Philippines, late afternoon traffic moved steadily along Tandang Sora Avenue. At 5:40 p.m., the temperature was around 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air was humid. The commercial strip was busy with people leaving small shops, lining up for jeepneys, and walking toward nearby side streets. Motorcycles, tricycles, and delivery trucks added constant background noise. Visibility was good, though the lowering sun cast long shadows across the pavement. Among the crowd was Ray Mendoza, a 21-year-old small YouTube content creator who was filming with 2 friends. Ray ran a channel with 5,000 subscribers focused on prank content, including staged hold-up pranks where he pretended to rob strangers using toy weapons. Before quickly revealing the joke, the group had already recorded several clips earlier that day. Ray wore a black hoodie and jeans, and carried a plastic prop pistol painted entirely black, with no markings to show it was fake. The group used a handheld camera and a phone mounted on a stabilizer to capture reactions from passers-by. Both devices recorded footage, which investigators later recovered. Earlier pranks that afternoon involved jumping out of alleyways or tapping someone's shoulder before showing them the toy gun. Witnesses later said most reactions were brief moments of confusion or annoyance, followed by Ray immediately explaining that it was a prank. People walked away without further incident. At 6:02 p.m., the group moved toward a narrow side street beside a local store. Investigators later noted that the low lighting in the alley reduced Roberto's ability to distinguish the toy gun from a real firearm. A few residents stood near the corner, talking casually. A motorcycle was parked about 15 feet from the entrance. Standing near the motorcycle was 48-year-old security guard Roberto, heading home after his shift at a nearby warehouse. He was dressed in civilian clothes but carried his licensed firearm in a waist holster. Several residents later said Roberto regularly passed through that area at the end of the day. Ray did not know Roberto was armed. At approximately 6:05 p.m., Ray walked into the alley holding the fake gun at his side. His two friends stayed farther back to record from different angles. Camera footage shows Ray moving quickly toward Roberto from a distance of about 10 feet. The heavy traffic noise from the main road masked his footsteps. Ray raised the prop gun and pointed it toward Roberto as he stepped forward. Some witnesses reported hearing him say something, but the exact words were unclear because of the surrounding noise. From Roberto's position, Ray looked like a man approaching with a real firearm. Footage from the store's CCTV showed Roberto stepping back immediately. He reached for his waist holster as Ray continued to move toward him. The entire sequence, from the moment Ray lifted the prop weapon to the gunshot, lasted under 3 seconds. Roberto fired once at close range. The bullet struck Ray in the upper chest. Ray fell backward onto the pavement, and the toy gun landed beside him. People near the store moved back quickly, and several residents called for help. Roberto placed his firearm on the ground and raised his hands, asking someone nearby to call the police. Ray's friends ran toward him, dropping the camera. The recovered audio captured their attempts to check his breathing and call for immediate assistance. Ray showed minimal movement and became unresponsive shortly after. Emergency responders arrived at 6:14 p.m., provided initial care, and transported Ray to a nearby hospital. The toy gun was collected as evidence. Investigators noted it had no markings indicating it was fake. Roberto cooperated with police immediately. Witness statements, CCTV, and the prank footage confirmed that Ray approached holding what appeared to be a real firearm. Prompting Roberto to perceive an imminent threat, Ray was pronounced dead shortly after arrival, the cause being a single gunshot wound to the chest. Police ruled the shooting self-defense, noting the realistic prop gun, low lighting, and fast pace of the encounter. On September 2, 2017, just outside Kalispell, Montana, early evening settled over a quiet rural highway. The two-lane road cut through dense stretches of pine and aspen, their tall outlines shifting slightly in the cool 48 degrees Fahrenheit air dusk had darkened the tree line. And with no streetlights, the only illumination came from passing headlights sweeping across the narrow 3-foot shoulder. The ground beside the pavement sloped into damp grass holding moisture from the morning, with uneven dirt and scattered rocks beneath it. Along this dim stretch walked 36-year-old Doug Lanley, a seasonal hunting guide familiar with the terrain. He was not scouting that evening. Doug had recently purchased a full ghillie suit, camouflage designed to blend into natural surroundings, and wanted to test it as part of a prank inspired by local Bigfoot sighting stories. He planned to crouch near the roadside and startle drivers with small movements. He chose a spot about 6 feet from the pavement and settled into the damp grass. The burlap, netting, and foliage-like strips of the suit blended him into the brush. His plan was simple: create a slight motion, let passing drivers notice, and later tell friends about the reactions. Doug wore sturdy boots and gloves, and his car was parked about 50 feet down the road. A cooler and a bag sat on the shoulder beside it. He intended to remain low until a vehicle approached, and he placed no warning lights or markers nearby. 2 vehicles traveled in the same direction along the road: a pickup truck carrying 2 teenagers and a sedan following several car lengths behind. Both maintained speeds near the posted 35 to 40 miles per hour limit. With the fading light, Doug's suit blended easily into the surrounding vegetation, making him difficult to detect. At approximately 7:18 p.m., the pickup neared Doug's location. Doug rose slightly and shifted closer to the shoulder to create movement. As he adjusted his stance, his right boot pressed onto a slick patch of grass covering loose soil. The surface dipped under his weight, causing his foot to slide several inches. Investigators later confirmed the slope and moisture created unstable footing. The slip pushed Doug closer to the pavement than planned. The pickup driver later reported seeing movement near the brush and assuming an animal might step out. As Doug rose higher, the driver instinctively swerved left. Doug, already off balance, tried to steady himself, but stepped onto another uneven patch where a small rock rolled beneath his boot. Investigators concluded the shifts in footing pushed him directly toward the lane. Doug's right side struck the pavement's edge as the pickup's fender and side mirror made contact with his shoulder. The impact threw him fully into the roadway, where he landed partially on his back and side. Within seconds, the sedan behind the pickup entered the curve. Its driver saw a figure lying in the lane and braked hard, but the distance was too short at that speed. The sedan struck Doug with the front bumper, adding further injury. Witnesses from both vehicles later stated they saw a camouflaged figure emerge from the shoulder, stumble, and then get hit twice in quick succession. The entire sequence occurred in less than 5 seconds. Emergency services arrived within minutes and found Doug unresponsive with severe head trauma, fractures, and internal injuries. Investigators noted that the 6-inch shoulder drop, wet grass, and uneven footing contributed to his slip toward the roadway. Tire marks and damage on both vehicles confirmed the sequence of impacts. Doug was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner ruled the cause of death blunt force trauma, and police classified the incident as an accidental result of the roadside prank. On October 31, 2015, in a quiet rural area outside Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the Rose farmhouse sat at the end of a long, unpaved driveway. The house was a single-story wooden structure with aging siding, drafty windows, and a narrow front porch. A single porch bulb provided the only light. The temperature hovered at 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and the air was dry and still. No trick-or-treaters came that far out, but a few plastic pumpkins and a small broom decoration hung near the door as part of the Rose simple Halloween setup. Inside, 58-year-old Delilah Rowe moved through her evening routine. She had finished cleaning up after dinner and was preparing to turn off the lights and lock the doors. She had lived in the farmhouse with her husband, Tom, a 62-year-old, for many years, settling into predictable patterns of rural life. Delilah was generally healthy, but had a history of fainting when startled. Tom, finishing chores in the barn earlier, found an old white Halloween mask stored with other seasonal items. Thinking it would be a lighthearted joke for the holiday, he put on the mask and an oversized jacket. He planned to knock on the front door and wait for Delilah to open it, expecting nothing more than a brief scare followed by a laugh. He stepped onto the dark porch and knocked at 9:53 p.m. A neighbor who lived about 100 feet away later said the knock carried clearly on the quiet Halloween night. Delilah approached the door, unlocked it, and cracked it open. The porch light illuminated the hollow eyes of the mask. The reaction was immediate. She took a quick step backward, but her right foot slid on a thin patch of moisture near the inside threshold. Condensation tracked in earlier from the cold air. As she moved back again, her heel caught the raised wooden lip of the doorway. The combination of the slippery spot, the backward motion, and the sudden startle caused her to lose balance. She fell onto the wooden porch, striking her left side before rolling onto her back. Porch camera footage later confirmed the fall happened less than a second after she recognized the mask. The neighbor reported hearing a sharp thud, followed by Tom shouting her name. Tom pulled the mask off immediately and knelt beside her. Tom later told investigators that her breathing was shallow and uneven, and she did not respond when he tried to lift her shoulders. At 9:57 p.m., he called 911 and stayed beside her until help arrived. Emergency responders reached the farmhouse within 7 minutes. They found Delilah unresponsive. With only minor abrasions from the fall, paramedics noted an irregular pulse. Paramedics initiated advanced resuscitation and transported her to the hospital. Medical staff determined that Delilah had experienced a catecholamine-triggered arrhythmia, a sudden disruption of heart rhythm caused by a high surge of stress hormones. In her case, the abrupt fright, combined with her known susceptibility to fainting, progressed into ventricular fibrillation, a rhythm in which the heart quivers instead of pumping blood effectively. Despite medical treatment, Delilah died later that night. Authorities reviewed porch footage and statements from Tom and the neighbor. They concluded Delilah died from a stress-induced arrhythmia triggered by the Halloween prank, with her fall causing only minor injury. The death was ruled accidental, and no charges were filed. Local advisories later warned about the risks of sudden startle pranks. It was March 18, 2016, Davao, Philippines. The morning sun beat down on a small grassy backyard behind a modest home, making the day hot but dry. Carlos Ramos, 32, a local farmer, and his friend Miguel Santos, 29, were finishing their morning chores and relaxing, joking about farm animals and wildlife. Both men were healthy, strong, and active. Nothing about the day suggested danger. Neither man realized the situation carried real risk. A villager had discovered a recently killed king cobra. Measuring nearly 8 feet stiff but not fully relaxed, the snake's muscles still held enough tension to react if provoked. Out of curiosity, Carlos and Miguel examined it. The tension between playfulness and risk was thin, and Carlos suggested what he thought would be a harmless joke. Toss the dead snake at Miguel and enjoy a laugh. At 10:15 a.m., Carlos lifted the snake to swing it toward his friend. As he shifted his grip, his thumb pressed the muscles near the snake's jaw. That pressure triggered a post-mortem reflex, causing the jaw to clamp briefly. The fangs punctured Carlos's hand and forearm before he released it. The puncture was small, but it delivered a potent dose of neurotoxic venom. Witnesses described the scene as chaotic. Miguel and his neighbors initially thought Carlos was exaggerating the pain, unaware of how quickly the venom would act. Within several minutes, Carlos became dizzy and weak, and his breathing started to shallow. The neurotoxic effects progressed quickly, consistent with a high-potency cobra bite. Medical staff and toxicology notes later explained that cobra venom is primarily neurotoxic, affecting the nerves that control movement and breathing. Once injected, the toxins interfere with communication between nerves and muscles. Paralysis can begin within several minutes and progress rapidly, especially without immediate antivenom. Carlos's symptoms escalated quickly. His speech slurred, his coordination vanished, and his body weakened as the neurotoxic effects continued to intensify. Friends and neighbors tried to keep him conscious and calm, but the venom advanced faster than they could respond. By the time he was transported to a local hospital, staff noted that the neurotoxic effects were already affecting his breathing and other critical functions. Medical staff administered supportive care and prepared antivenom, but the speed of the bite and the rural delay proved fatal. Despite their efforts, Carlos Ramos succumbed to neurotoxic envenomation, a tragic outcome resulting from a combination of a misjudged prank, residual reflexive snake movement, and a fast-acting venom consistent with large cobra species. Authorities classified the death as accidental. Miguel provided a full statement, confirming that Carlos had intended the act as a joke and that the reflexive bite occurred instantly. No criminal charges were filed. The incident became a cautionary tale for the community, and local officials issued advisories warning that even dead venomous snakes can still deliver functional bites. Safety protocols were updated to prevent similar incidents. On January 1, 2019, in Aurora, Colorado, early evening traffic moved steadily along commercial areas on the city's south side. The weather was clear and cool at 54 degrees Fahrenheit, with streetlights providing good visibility. At the wide multi-lane intersections, drivers headed home from stores and restaurants, and traffic remained moderate. Around 7:30 p.m., a red SUV carrying 3 teenagers traveled west through the area. The driver, 14-year-old Joshua Thompson, had taken his family's vehicle without permission. His two friends, Brian and Philip, sat in the back. Earlier that evening, the group had been throwing eggs at passing cars to film reactions for social media. Witnesses later reported seeing them laughing and leaning out the window to hit vehicles that passed close to the SUV. During one of these passes, an egg struck the side window of a sedan, whose driver had just pulled out from a small commercial parking lot. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses showed the sedan slowing briefly before turning to follow the teens. The sedan accelerated to close the gap, and Joshua increased speed in an attempt to get away. Both vehicles moved unpredictably as they traveled across multiple lanes. Witnesses said the chase continued for several blocks as the SUV weaved repeatedly through traffic. The teens eventually approached a major intersection where westbound lanes met a larger arterial road. Traffic signals controlled all directions. The light for Joshua's approach was red. At the same time, 30-year-old Jackie Brown was traveling southbound through the intersection in her silver sedan. With the right-of-way, other motorists later said traffic in her direction was moving normally under the steady green signal. Dash cam footage from a vehicle several cars behind Jackie captured the moment the red SUV entered the intersection at high speed. Estimated at roughly 45 to 50 miles per hour, Joshua did not brake. Drivers stopped in the cross-traffic lanes had no time to react as the SUV crossed against the signal. Jackie's sedan entered the intersection at a consistent speed. The SUV struck the driver's side in a lateral impact, pushing her vehicle into a rotation before it slid to a stop angled across the southbound lanes. The SUV came to rest near the opposite curb. Several motorists pulled over and called emergency services. Witnesses approached the vehicles and reported limited or no movement inside the silver sedan. The SUV's occupants exited quickly. Brian and Philip ran toward the sidewalk while Joshua remained near the vehicle with a phone in his hand. First responders arrived within minutes. Paramedics assessed Jackie and found her unresponsive. The sedan showed significant intrusion along the driver's side. Consistent with a high-speed side impact, fire personnel used tools to reach her and remove her with caution. Police separated the teenagers and gathered statements from Joshua, Brian, and Philip. Witness accounts supported the sequence of events: eggs thrown at passing vehicles, a driver reacting by pursuing the teens, and Joshua running a red light while attempting to flee. Officers noted that the pursuing sedan had no contact with either vehicle. Jackie Brown was transported to a nearby hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The medical examiner listed her cause of death as blunt force trauma from a lateral collision. Investigators concluded the fatality resulted from the teen SUV entering the intersection at high speed against a red signal. Joshua Thompson admitted to throwing eggs earlier in the evening and accelerating when the sedan began following them. Investigators noted that the egg-throwing prank set off the chain of events that led to the high-speed red light violation and the fatal collision. Joshua was detained and later charged under juvenile statutes related to negligent homicide and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. Thanks for watching. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat, click here to discover more.